cause bloating, irritability, and dryness of mouth. Excessive consumption of the Moco Loco Rothenator product could promote nervousness and have a profound laxative effect.
All right, YouTube, we are back again. We're going to be continuing our nostalgic deep dives. We'll be looking at some more. Well, not a few more, but this one in particular, we have a throwback to a actual spinoff of an older show from TV, Daria, which was the direct spinoff from Beavis and Butthead. She was a recurring character there. And so we're going to take a look at Daria, Alienation and the Limits of Irony by Michael Saba. So let us take a look-see. Daria was one of those shows that I cut a few episodes of. Same with like Beavis and Butthead. Was able to watch a few episodes of that, like on MTV and everything before. Well, MTV I feel like was still showing music videos at that time, early in the morning and whatnot, and that's where I would catch Beavis and Butthead. But once they stopped showing the music videos, I feel like that's also around the time I stopped seeing like Beavis and Butthead and Daria as much, at least. So yeah, let's take a look here.
You've barely said a word.
Yeah, Daria, tell your dad what edgy is.
As far as I can make out, edgy occurs when middle-brow, middle-aged profiteers are looking to suck the energy, not to mention spending money, out of the quote-unquote youth culture. So they come up with this fake concept of seeming to be dangerous when every move they make is the result of market research and a corporate master plan.
You're standing on my neck. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Growing up as a disaffected kid in the rural mid-Atlantic US, I don't think I've ever identified with a TV character as much as I have with Daria Morgendorffer. Daria saw through the bullshit. Americans are propagandized non-stop to believe that our way of life is special and no one has it as good as we do. But this sheen of material comfort hides a darker secret. Life in the hyper-capitalist US is actually boring, confusing, alienating, and depressing. So what then is an intelligent, sensitive, and principled person supposed to do? How should a thinking person live when society itself is at odds with their attempts to live an upstanding and moral life? During Daria's run from 1997 to 2001, Generation X was beginning to assert itself in culture and politics. Now, fair warning, the entire concept of generations is mostly just bullshit dreamed up by marketers in order to sell us stuff. But for the purposes of this discussion, the concept of generations is useful because
Gen Y, Z, X, all that bull BS more divided.
It tells us a lot about what society believes about itself and how members of these different groups perceive each other. Baby boomers stereotyped Gen X as lazy, apathetic, sarcastic, and utterly detached.
God, keep cracking wise. That's why you're jockeying to register in some fucking local convenience store instead of working on a steady job.
If you read popular accounts of Gen Xers from the time, you'll find that they all hit the same notes that millennials are used to hearing these days.
Voice and his words spoke to their fears and frustrations, but many of the older generation just don't get it.
Just like millennials, Gen Xers came up during what was, at the time, the biggest recession since World War II. They had little in the way of employment prospects besides crappy retail gigs and other service industry McJobs. And despite the collapse of the Soviet Union, the American war machine rolled on, and worship of the military and conspicuous displays of patriotism became the norm. The 90s were awash with rah-rah enthusiasm about the triumph of the West. The Cold War had ended, and we were entering a period of supposedly never-before-seen economic prosperity and peace. But in reality, things still weren't that great for regular people.
But you shouldn't have any trouble finding another job, Sugar Booger.
No, see, I tried. I applied for every single opening in my field, but there's nothing right now.
Well, then I hate to say it, but times are hard. You're just gonna have to swallow your pride. Why don't you get a job at Burgerama? They'll hire you.
Now what? Does this not sound
And so, ironic detachment and sarcasm became the watchwords of Gen X. Which is where Daria comes in. By the time Daria debuted, the stereotype of Gen X as a generation of good-for-nothings was fixed in the American imagination. Daria the character was herself a spin-off of the Mike Judge show Beavis and Butthead, who are perhaps the ultimate cartoon slacker duo. So at first glance, Daria seems like the picture-perfect embodiment of the Gen Xer. Cold, detached, sarcastic, and utterly unwilling to play along with social niceties.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. That's tremendously helpful.
But throughout the show, Daria is revealed to be an intensely, uncompromisingly moral and principled person, even when it alienates her from everyone around her.
Since the token women and minorities you hire rarely move into upper management, and since I won't give the answers you want to hear in hopes of somehow bucking the odds, I guess you can just pass on me as if I were one of your female employees up for promotion.
Oh.
It suggests an uncomfortable truth about all those stereotypes about Gen Xers, and by extension, the generations that came after. For people who are able to see the world as it really is, detachment and misanthropy are actually pretty reasonable reactions. When you're at the
Talking about on next, damn.
mercy of savage economic and political systems that are completely out of your control, cynicism starts looking like a pretty rational response.
The system's failed us.
The system sucks.
This posture of ironic detachment from a cruel and uncaring existence, from a sick, sad world, is intimately connected to Karl Marx's theory of alienation. When you're deprived of agency in work and politics, when you no longer have the ability to set your own course in life, it's entirely natural and human to feel detached from reality. And Marxist alienation is a perfect description of Daria's life in the upper middle class suburbs of Lawndale. A suffocating mix of McMansions, neatly manicured lawns, textureless shopping malls, and an all-consuming sense of complacency. A suburban tableau where everything is in its right place and everything is as it should be. Daria dared to ask whether this vision of American-style success was actually worth living for.
My goal is not to wake up at 40 with the bitter realization that I've wasted my life in a job I hate because I was forced to decide on a career in my teens.
I could go on and on and on. Daria is an amazing show. There's a certain timelessness to the humor and the characters that still holds up today, more than 2 decades since its debut. And yet it's a show that is also completely of its time. This show could not have been made in any other moment than that brief halcyon era between the end of the Cold War and September 11th. Which is why I can't think of anything that's less Daria than the woke Daria reboot MTV has planned.
The iconic animated franchise is reinvented through the eyes of heroine Daria Morgendorffer and one of her closest friends, Jody Landon. These two smart young women take on the world with their signature satirical voice while deconstructing popular culture, social classes, gender, and race.
Jody Landon was the one character in the show who could reliably serve as a mirror to Daria's more selfish and inward-focused tendencies. Jody was just as smart, just as forthright, and just as moral as Daria, but her character was informed by how she also had to navigate racial biases in everyday life.
Don't you think Val could try harder to present a multicultural, multi-ethnic, less brain-dead point of view to enlighten girls instead of just marketing to them?
What's your name?
Jody.
Jody, you've got great sassy energy. Now let me turn it back on you. Pea green nail polish, edgy or icky? What do you guys think?
What?
So where Daria had the privilege to be an absolutist, Jody had to be a flexible pragmatist just to get by. Where Daria refused to participate, Jody was a joiner, the go-along-to-get-along type. Daria held court with grunge rockers, and Jody was immersed in the country club set, which in the 90s were only just starting to open up their doors to black folks. Jody's character was important to the show because of how she served as a foil, a counterpoint to Daria, pointing out biases and flaws in her way of thinking, especially when it came to race.
And if I happen to depart from your black and white world of ethics, no pun intended,
none taken,
and wandered into a gray area, then too bad. Maybe the first guy was a racist, maybe not. Maybe I was right. Maybe I overreacted. Hey, you wouldn't be working with me if you weren't fighting with Jane. Does that make you a racist?
Don't be ridiculous.
They were never friends, and they butted heads more often than they got along. At best, they shared a mutual but grudging respect. And most importantly, Jodie was fully aware that her peers and the people of Lawndale, Daria included, saw her more as a token minority than as a full and complete person with her own needs and desires.
But at school, I'm the queen of the Negroes, the perfect African-American teen, the role model for all of the other African-American teens at Lawndale. Oops, where'd they go?
Jodie actively called out this kind of tokenism, so it's really, really uncomfortable to see that MTV is apparently doing exactly that. I don't want to speculate too much because we don't know that much else about the show yet, but I think we can all agree that we don't need a writer for Inside Amy Schumer being given a platform to make jokes about race in America. The brilliant thing about Daria is that it didn't just settle for satire and deconstruction. It went to great lengths to humanize most of its main characters and show how they're all battling similar insecurities. One of the show's main themes is Daria coming to terms with how she contributes to her own alienation by always being ironic and detached and refusing to be emotionally vulnerable to others.
I just want to say, it occurs to me that maybe I wasn't the easiest child in the world to raise. And, perhaps I'm quite lucky to have you for parents.
There was even an entire episode of Daria about what happens when out-of-touch adults try to be hip and appeal to a younger demographic via the artless exploitation of pop culture.
Maybe I should write about cheerleading as the new yoga. Last year I did yoga as the new cheerleading, but I'm ready for a different spin. Pretty good for a 28-year-old, huh?
28?
Which gets at the root of why this Daria revival is such a terrible idea. Daria is a kind of Holden Caulfield character. That's the protagonist of the novel Catcher in the Rye, who famously saw the phonies of the world for what they really were and wasn't afraid to call them out. But Catcher in the Rye suggested that Holden's alienation from society is just a phase, one that he'll eventually grow out of. Daria suggests the opposite. Alienation is the new normal in America, and anyone saying otherwise is either massively deluded or trying to sell you something.
We never used to think about stuff like this.
I know. What's happened to us?
I don't know. Selling out?
Buying in?
Joining the system?
Being co-opted?
Maybe we're just getting older.
Because these days, there's nothing particularly special about the show's cynicism and self-awareness. Irony and disaffection are no longer the calling cards of a specific niche. They're pretty much the default stance. It's perfectly normal and even expected now for a show or a movie to break the fourth wall, winking and nodding to the audience about how smart they are for being in on the joke.
Oh, hello. I know, right? Whose balls did I have to fondle to get my very own movie?
This all-encompassing irony has even found its way into commercials.
Folks, it's just good f***ing beer. Can't say f***.
And let's not even get into what happens when irony meets politics. These days, there's nothing special or unique at all about ironic detachment. Irony is no longer a way for us to cope with a hopeless world. It is now the primary way the world markets our own hopelessness back to us.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of like self-deprecation and like a lot of poking fun at like how hopeless and degraded the world is right now. And it's like everybody's kind of talking around the subject about how things are terrible, but like just kind of ha ha ha, adding like an LOL at the end of it every time, just so it doesn't seem as serious like that.
Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
And there it is.
If you're genuinely excited about the Daria reboot because it means we're getting more Daria, that's cool. No one can dictate who is and isn't a Daria fan. There's a lot of exclusionary bullshit gatekeeping about who gets to enjoy certain kinds of media, and that's never a good thing. But at the same time, I have a creeping feeling that this Daria reboot is going to be the latest example of what I can only call woke washing. That's when a media property drapes itself in all the right progressive signifiers,
social classes, gender, and race,
in order to mask a deeper subservience to the status quo. Kind of like what Zack Snyder does, only in reverse. It's great that Star Trek Discovery prominently features women and people of color in lead roles, but it's less great that this is done in service to a vision of a grimdark, hyper-militaristic future where the Federation is a thematic stand-in for Western cultural and military hegemony. And it's great that so many people found the recent Wonder Woman movie uplifting and inspiring, but it sucks hard that this ode to girl power was straight-up propaganda for why military interventions are a good thing. Daria is more than a cartoon character now. She's an icon, a figure of defiance in a hopeless world. She deserves better than a cynical cash grab reboot that has no purpose other than boosting Viacom's stock price. Because no one would hate this Daria reboot more than Daria.
Civil rights, environmentalism, the women's movement. People believed in stuff back then.
I know. What's up with that?
La 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 la. This is my stuff. Got to get off. I make you laugh. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Alright, Michael Saba. That was Daria, Alienation and the Limits of Irony. That was fantastic. I didn't think we were getting so deep in that one. Less of a breakdown of the actual show. Well, I would say it's actually about the fundamentals of the... Oh, wait. Did I... Hold on. I'm frozen. I was like, wait, what's going on? 1 second. What's going on? We back. There we go. But yeah, no, I would say that that's definitely like a introspective of like the actual depth of the character Daria on the show. So that was still pretty. Setting up the show didn't necessarily need a breakdown of the what made the show and everything, especially when this was so socially aware and everything. And like I said, I don't think they actually did the Daria reboot. I think that fell through, luckily. Hopefully. It's originally planned as a series about Daria and Jodie, but was later changed to the animated film Jodie. Okay. 2022, that Jodie would be an animated film. So did that happen? Okay, so instead of them doing the Daria and Jodie show, they decided to just do a Jodie movie. And not moving forward with it. Okay. Saved by the... Oh, wait. Is that... Welcome back, YouTube. We are back with another of our nostalgic deep dives. We're going to be diving into some more OG animated cartoons. This one we're going to be diving into As Told by Ginger. As Told by Ginger was actually a cartoon that I remember watching pretty actively. Like, I remember her brother had like a fucking lab and like the doghouse in the backyard or something like that. It was something crazy like that, I remember. But well, she had the fire ass intro. Someone once told me the grass was much greener on the other side. Oh, that's still in right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so we're gonna go into this quick little deep dive here. Nickelodeon's most underrated cartoon. Why you should watch As Told by Ginger by Draw Opinion Dump.
No cartoon. We're all familiar with Nicktoons. You know, the original cartoon shows made for Nickelodeon. Can I get some noise in the comments from my fellow 90s kids? The list of shows under this category is just as extensive as it is iconic. You've got your classics like Hey Arnold, Cat Dog, and The Wild Thornberrys, which have spawned several seasons and even a movie or two. The absolute phenomenons, such as the Rugrats and SpongeBob, which seemed to rule the world for a while. The Butch Hartman ones like Fairly Odd Parents and Danny Phantom. The more adult ones like Rocko's Modern Life and Ren and Stimpy, the ones we love to remember and the ones we try to forget. And honestly, that's not even scratching the surface. There are dozens of shows that make up the channel's cartoon lineup, and I could stay here all day talking about their cultural impact. Nicktoons were the source of a lot of fond memories for people all over the world, and when it comes to their role in defining the channel's identity, I guess you could say they were paramount. I'm sorry. However, when it comes to these beloved series, there is one in particular that I feel is always left to the sidelines, even though it clearly deserves a lot more praise and attention. Well, I'm here to fix this situation, and also to question every single top 10 best Nicktoons list that doesn't add this show at least to their top 5. I want to talk about As Told by Ginger. As Told by Ginger is a Nicktoon that originally aired between the years of 2000 and 2005 on Nickelodeon, and later had a few reruns on its sister channels. It was created by Emily Kapnick, who even went on to voice a character in the series, and it was made by Classic Supo. You may recognize the company's signature style, known mainly for their work in the Rugrats and the Wild Thornberries, and their absolute inability to draw the mouth in the correct place. I mean, come on guys, you just gotta put it right there. The show follows our protagonist Ginger Foutley as she deals with the many social situations
with this crooked ass mouth on her character. Like what? What? Or are you just mad that their mouth is like at the bottom of their chin and then they have no chin?
and dilemmas that come with being a middle schooler, such as popularity, friendship, romance, heartbreak, betrayal, addiction, financial issues, and a largely absent father. You know, just girly things. All jokes aside, though, that list of issues is barely an exaggeration.
No, it's not.
Hidden behind the show's perky subject matter, there are a lot of deeper themes that are tackled with a level of sincerity and nuance that is hard to spot in other cartoons from the same time period, or even nowadays, actually. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's explore the basic premise a little more first. Ginger is a middle schooler that lives with her single mother, a nurse called Lois, and her younger brother Carl, who is very fond of the gross and weird. Like every preteen girl, she's bound to find her family a little embarrassing, especially considering how unconventional they are and how different they seem from the families of her classmates. Her best friends are her next-door neighbor Darren, who's known her since they were little, Macy, who lives in a state of perpetual allergies, and Dodie, who is cheerful, loud, and the absolute worst.
Wait.
Who is cheerful, loud, and the absolute worst.
I think Dodie is done. Was fully willing to destroy someone else's reputation in order to get a shot of popularity. Okay, it's only episode 5. Exposed Ginger's deepest, darkest secrets because she was jealous of all the attention she was getting from Courtney. Erased Ginger from enjoying the popular girl life, but would later try to enjoy the life herself. Grows incredibly attached to power as soon as she's given a bit of authority, even if it affects the survival of her friends. 3 episodes straight. Keeps making excuses for her crazy mother, even if it compromises her friend's comfort. Fakes an injury to get. What's funny is it goes 29 and then 55, and then all of a sudden she spun the blocks like, hold up, actually, matter of fact, fakes an injury to get a shot at becoming a cheerleader and keeps up the act because she likes the attention. Encourages Ginger and crush on an adult teacher and pushes her to ask him out during a encourages Ginger's crush on an adult teacher and pushes her to ask him out during a live broadcast of their competition. Hey, y'all, Dodie's a problem. Trying to break Ginger and her boyfriend up by working together with people who actively hate Ginger. What was her reasoning behind it? Why did she want to break them up? I mean, there's no good reason, sure, but I want to know.
This main girl trio has the whole friendship thing going pretty well for them, but they still can't help but wish to be a part of the in crowd, as they aren't exactly the most popular kids in school.
This spot seems to be occupied almost exclusively by Courtney Grippling, who is rich enough to make you question why she's still attending public school, and the girl posse that surrounds her, who all seem to bend to her will. Meanwhile, Courtney harbors a special kind of fascination towards Ginger. Even though the two have nothing in common and belong to entirely different social groups, Courtney is always trying to get Ginger to hang out or attend parties together, or overall just share more of her unusual world. Courtney's best friend Miranda, however, fails to understand his obsession and tries to keep Ginger out of the popular crowd just as much as Courtney is trying to lure her in. This is the source of a lot of the storylines from the show, especially from the first season. Courtney feels like a specialist in teen situations, something that Ginger still struggles with. And while she really wants to know more about this world, she also fears that she might have to steer too far off from her true self. Luckily for her, Courtney is more than willing to be her guide, even if she can be a bit of an airhead herself at times. It's funny to watch this series now that I'm older than the main cast. I remember watching it as a kid when I was still in elementary school, so everything Ginger went through felt really distant and magical, but at the same time, very close and terrifying. I felt like it wouldn't be long until I would have to go through the same stuff myself, and I thought all of the characters were so mature and cool. Now that I'm past that phase, however, I see how silly we all were for making such a big deal out of those things, even if they all felt like immeasurable landmarks at the time. And to me, that's part of the brilliance of the show. It manages to strike that perfect balance where you can relate to the characters no matter how old you are. You can see yourself trying to walk in Ginger's shoes within a few years, or remember how it felt to be that age years ago. Aside from that, I feel like the angle that the writing takes is also very clever. Ginger might try to come out of her shell a couple of times, but the series is actually constantly showing us that making yourself uncomfortable in the search for social status is a bad thing, and that staying true to yourself is always the best option, as cliché as it might sound. For example, one episode has Courtney trying to push Ginger towards having her first kiss during a ski trip, which just brings two of Ginger's fears together, kissing and skiing. By the end of the episode, she conquers both of those fears by learning to ski and by not kissing a boy, because she realizes that she can just do the latter whenever she feels truly ready for it. In another episode, Ginger and her friends want to wear makeup when having their school picture taken, so they can get a shot at looking less dorky and more like the popular kids. Ginger's mother forbids it, thinking that the girls are too young for that stuff, but the trio makes their own makeup in secret, which brings really awful results. And they all decide that, really, there isn't much use in trying to look older and cooler, because it doesn't really reflect who they are. In trying to degrade Ginger, Miranda often calls her a total wannabe, but Ginger never really tried to be anything other than herself. Her whole character can be summed up by her own quote, as she says,
"I'd rather be nice than popular."
At the end of the day, that's the part of her that always shined through, no matter what new social situations she had to experience. And I just find that to be a really good lesson. We've got the whole school stuff figured out then. Stay true to yourself, popularity isn't always the answer, friendship is worth more than status, and all that. But then we look into Ginger's family life. And then we get into the good stuff. Ginger was mostly raised by her mother Lois, a hardworking nurse with a strong personality. At first, not much is known about her father aside from the fact that he left the family pretty early on, shortly after Ginger's brother was born, and then he stayed gone for most of their lives. In fact, even his absence was barely brought up until episode 7, Hello Stranger. In this episode, Ginger is tasked with writing a poem for a school presentation and gets really excited when she invites her father to come, thinking that he will show up. Despite all other characters trying to get her to manage her expectations, since he technically never accepted her invitation, and also because he hadn't been very present in her life thus far. Still, she remains convinced that he will come to see her, and even dedicates her poem to him, and then he never shows up. Her mother, who couldn't be at the presentation for unrelated reasons, sends her flowers in his name because she knows how much Ginger wants him to be there. But Ginger sees right through it and thanks her mother for the gesture. This episode got nominated for an Emmy Award back in 2001, and you can totally see why. The depth of the relationships between these characters is not something that you watch every day. This feels like a heavy theme for kids programming, but the show has never been afraid of tackling these issues. Ginger's bond with her mother also feels very real. There are moments in which Ginger feels embarrassed by her wacky family, but Lois has always tried her best to be present and supportive, and it works out in her favor. They have an open channel of communication, and Ginger is always welcome to talk about her life and problems, as she is always free to keep her own secrets too. Ginger sometimes worries that her mother might be miserable because she's single, but Lois always makes it very clear that she's happy with the way things are and she likes to take control of her own life. She is not embarrassed by who she is, or by how much money her family has, or by how unconventional the Foutleys can be. And again, I think that's also a great lesson. Lois isn't perfect, but she is a very concerned and loving mother, as well as a very well-written character. If all of this seems too girl-centric for you, don't worry. All of the episodes also have Ginger's brother Carl carrying out his own B-plot along with his best friend Hoodsie, who happens to be Dodie's brother. Joining in on their adventures is Blake, Courtney's brother, who sometimes tries to play along with their schemes while other times acting more like an antagonist, sharing for Carl the same fascination that Courtney shares for the boy's sister. These boy-centric segments have their own charm to them, as the lads talk in a fancy, professor-like manner, as if they were businessmen instead of children, which is a funny contrast by itself, but it's also a nice way to show how seriously you take your childhood adventures when you're living through them. Your backyard projects and playground interactions might as well feel like business transactions. Another neat thing about the series is the continuity. The characters actually grow throughout the course of the show, changing school years, outfits, and hairstyles. Things that happen in episode 1 are still being referenced well into the 3rd season, and you get a sense that nothing is truly gratuitous. Characters are allowed to be impacted by the things that happen in their lives, and they get to learn and grow from it. As Told by Ginger is an outstanding series.
So they actually like progress versus like, oh yeah, showing like the same outfit and hairstyles with the entire series. They actually gave it room to each character was able to grow and be diverse, and actually like the character growth that they got and later in the series, earlier in the series was still shining through, or later in the series. I do remember that eyeball being throughout the series a lot. So they had a lot of callbacks and everything as well. So that's dope to see.
With compelling characters, relatable storylines, and fantastic writing.
Because obviously the show isn't necessarily targeted towards me, but I definitely watched it quite a lot, especially for her little brother, because he was always on some wild stuff. Like I said, I remember like seeing the brother a lot, and that makes sense to find out that it's due to him being like the B plot mostly.
When developing the show, it was very important to Emily Kapnick that everything was kept real and authentic. She drew inspiration from her own life experiences and allowed the characters to develop from the things they lived through. In the end, we've got a cartoon series that still feels topical even after 20 years of its original release. Oh my god, it's really been 20 years. I feel so old. Ironically enough, Nickelodeon kinda gave the series the same amount of love that Nicktoons fans give it today. The series finale didn't even air officially in the US, and was instead confined to DVD collections. The characters are never included in ensemble merchandise. I mean, we're talking about a show with 3 Emmy nominations here. Couldn't we at least spare it a little bit of the spotlight? That's where I come in, I guess. If I have to kickstart an As Told by Ginger revival, then so be it. It is a wonderful series that you will not regret watching. And if somebody could get me that green journal of Gingers as a piece of merch, I definitely wouldn't complain. Thank you for watching. Well, hello there. It was very nice of you to watch this video. If you have enjoyed the video, you can do those cool things such as clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell too.
And hit that bell. Oh my god. Alright. So that was Draw Opinions Dump. Nickelodeon's most underrated cartoon. Why you should watch As Told by Ginger. Beautiful, beautiful. Love to see it. Appreciate it. Like I said, I definitely watched As Told by Ginger a lot. I didn't keep up to on it as a degree of like a show that I was like watching religiously or anything to keep up with like the plot and all that. Oh, Macy Gray. Okay. Macy Gray did the opening. But it was definitely one of the ones that I definitely peeked in on a lot because you did have the weird little brother and like As Told by Ginger was always just a good show. Like the opening was always fire and like any other episodes and plots were always interesting. But they just followed some, like I said, the main characters and everything were, I feel like, more female oriented. So. But let's take a look at this intro because this is fire. And if I remember correctly, I had an episode of this in Fairly Odd Parents. They had the little Nicktoons video player. I think they were called like Video Now, something like that. And you could like get little episodes of each show or like seasons possibly. But like I know you could get like episodes specifically of disc episodes and you could put in a little Video Now to watch it. I had As Told by Ginger. I know I had an episode of Fairly Odd Parents and I think Rocket Power. So I will forever remember that opening. Let's see.
Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side. And I'm ready to visit. It seemed different yet exactly the same. Yeah. Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side.
Such a fire ass opening too, like come on. Oh boy. Okay, so I was As Told by Ginger on our breakdowns, our nostalgia deep dive. Let's see, do I have any more to check tonight? We good there. Okay, we're gonna end that video there. See you on YouTube.
Come on. Let the door hit you where the big guy split you. That is so cold.